board.
Thank you.
All right. I just want to welcome everybody this morning. As people are coming in, I'm curious to hear what your interest is in, if you have any particular interests in the crochet, what we're going to be covering in crocheting and learning to read a pattern. I'm wondering if you have any specific ideas in mind of what you were hoping to learn today. So, and maybe what your current ability is with crocheting, whether you're a beginner, intermediate, or advanced. So I'd be curious to hear. You must be a quiet bunch this morning. Oh, I see some people chatting. Thank you. Is it Danya or Danya? What a pretty name. Beginner. Okay. That's great.
Sarah, we are live on Get Set Up. I have made you host. Can you make me co-host back?
I sure can. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Let me get you. Let me get you back here. Hi, Grandma. How are you?
I Zoom a lot with my grandkids, so that's what I do most. So I'm Grandma, but my name is Marty.
Hi, Marty. I have to tell you, I was just a little bit nervous when I saw Grandma, because I don't know if you guys are aware, but we had a hacking incident over the weekend, and I was one of the hosts that got hacked. And so now I'm looking at every single name going, oh no. Thanks for joining your camera.
I forgot to change the setup for this. But no, I'm basically a beginner. I was a knitter all my life, and okay. I do know how to do the basic stitches.
Good.
But I don't know. I find the pattern sentence too long, yes. And too hard to break up. I'm just more used to the small abbreviations from knitting.
Yeah.
So it sort of stumps me, but I can crochet a border around a blanket or something, or
Awesome. That's awesome.
Like I said, I know the basic stitches, but I've never made anything other than a border.
Okay. All right. Well, good. Well, let me.
Sarah, sorry to interrupt you. Can you make me co-host, please?
I did. I thought I did. Well, let me look, Victor. I thought I did. So sorry.
No worries.
Let's try that again.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm back. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. All right, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to share my screen and just give you a little bit of, I guess, heads up on what I'm going to be covering. Let me just get my screen settled here. What this is it's specifically a class on learning to read the pattern. And then at the end, if we have time, I'll cover yarn selection, but let me tell you what it's not. So it's not a beginner class. It's not a learn how to crochet class. It's a learn how to read the pattern. So there's some assumptions that you might know how to do a slip knot, how to do a chain, and maybe how to do, 1 or 2 or 3 stitches, single crochet, half double crochet, double crochet, or a triple crochet maybe. So there's some assumptions that you know a little bit about it. And I just want to put that out there because I don't want anybody to get frustrated thinking, oh my gosh, she's going to teach us how to crochet from scratch. And here I am in this, breaking this crochet code. So there is an assumption that you have a little bit of experience with crocheting. Now, if you don't, and if this concept frustrates you, I do teach a learn to crochet class. It's not, I don't think it's on the schedule right now, but it will be probably not next week, but the week after, which starts from the very, very basics and works forward. So feel free to do that. And then the next class that I'll be developing with both crocheting and knitting is an intermediate class. So in the beginning level of the learn to crochet class, I cover I just get through the single crochet stitch. So my next class will include some variations of the stitches. So I just want you to know that so that you know what I'm actually going to be covering today. Are there any questions before I get started then? And I assume you can all see my screen, right? Okay, great. So I'm Sarah. I live in Everett, Michigan, although I'm coming to you from Chicago today, Chicago, Illinois. I had two grandbaby daughters born last Tuesday and Wednesday. They were expected 5 weeks apart, and they were born within 24 hours of each other, and one in Dayton, Ohio, and one in Chicago. So I've been on the road for the last week. So Everett seems like a distant memory at this point. I spent 22 years in education. I'm a recently retired elementary principal. Part of my career I spent working for MSU, which was certainly a highlight. I live by quotes. I love quotes. And one of my favorites is people do the best they can with what they know. And when they know better, they do better. And what that says to me is I can always learn something new. And so when I retired and I got to January and I was a little bit bored, I was scrolling through my Facebook feed and I found Get Set Up and I started taking classes. And I thought, oh my gosh, this just fits so well with this philosophy of people doing the best they can with what they know and doing better when they know better, that I just signed up to teach classes and I haven't regretted it. I think it's a great partnership and I'm so happy that they have really looked at older learners as an untapped field, really, that there are lots of us out here who are interested in this, and I just love it. Get Set Up helps you learn useful skills, and it helps me learn useful skills as well. So I learn from you, you learn from me. Ideally, I can see you and cameras are on, and I just want to explain, especially when I'm teaching a craft, having the camera on helps me see, like if you're frowning, and that tells me that you're not getting it, and I maybe need to say it a little bit differently, or if your face is, if you're smiling at me, I know you might be getting the content, so that does help me. But if you keep your camera off, I fully understand that's okay. After the class is over and you're scratching your head saying, man, I wish I could remember what she said about whatever it might be, know that you can email help@getsetup.io and tell them that you'd like a copy of the recording from Sarah's class today on learning to read a crochet pattern, and they'll send you a recording. Now, you do have to be present to get a copy of that recording. You can't request a past class, for example, but that's a way that you can get a copy of today's class if you're here with me. If you're joining by live stream, I want to welcome you. I'm glad you're here. But I'd also like to invite you, if you'd like to fully participate in our Zoom venue, to hop on over to the getsetup.io website and sign up directly for a class. An advantage to doing that is you can ask me questions in real time and get answers. Hopefully you can get answers. Hopefully I know the answers to your questions. Get Set Up, nor I am paid to promote specific products, but as a crafter, I have my favorites and I can't help but mention them. I just want you to know no one's endorsing me or Get Set Up to do so. Please feel free. We're a smaller class today. You can ask questions in the chat, or you can unmute and ask directly. We have Victor on board with us today. Victor's my teaching and technical assistant. If you're having any trouble at all with your technology, Victor might be able to help you out. Would you like to say good morning, Victor?
Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
And he'll also be kind of following the chat so that if I miss anything, he'll bring that to my attention, which I very much appreciate. So this is what we're going to be covering today. We're going to cover the parts of a pattern. We're going to cover rounds, rows, and stitches. And really, honestly, I think it was it Marty? Marty, right?
Yes.
Marty,
Yes.
yeah, I think what Marty was saying earlier is when you look at a pattern, a knitting pattern or a crocheting pattern, it looks like a code. And if you can understand how to break the code, you can create any project you want to. And that's why I had an interest in creating this class, is so that you could take your crocheting to the next level. We're going to talk a little bit about finishing your project. And if we have time at the end, we'll cover understanding and choosing yarns. So is there anyone that would like to add anything that they were hoping I would cover today, or any questions that I might want to consider up front? Good. Okay. All right. I'm going to keep going then. So these are some of the most common abbreviations that you're going to see in a crocheting pattern. So the first question a person might ask is, do I have to memorize all of these? And the answer to that question is no, you don't have to memorize them. You can go online and you can Google common crochet abbreviations, and you're going to get a list just like the one you're looking at here. So you don't have to memorize anything. What memorizing does is it helps you go faster, right? It's going to help you do your project faster. And if you understand the punctuation in a crochet sentence, a crochet row, for example, you're also going to be able to move more quickly and be more confident in your crocheting, which is part of the reason that we do this. So I'm going to talk for a minute about these terms that I've put in here. And this is not a comprehensive list by any means. These are just the most common ones. But we'll talk more about how you find out how to do those other ones in a couple minutes. So CH is almost always the abbreviation for chain. You might see CHS for chains, but I very rarely have seen that. It's usually CH for chain. It's usually SLST for a slip stitch. It's usually SC for single crochet, HDC half double crochet, DC double crochet, TC treble or triple crochet. It's called both treble or triple. INC is the abbreviation for increase. DEC is the abbreviation for decrease. Turn means you're going to turn your project and work the other direction. You most often see that in rows as opposed to rounds, where you're going to turn and go back the other direction. Join might mean connect two stitches together, and REP might mean repeat. So those are the common ones. Any question on those, or do you have one that you've seen that you're wondering about what it means? I'll give you a minute to respond here. Okay. So next, we're going to cover the parts of a crochet pattern itself. So what I did, and I'm going to give you the link to this when I get done, so that you can, if you wanted to work with this pattern, you could. And a lot of, I'm going to give you a lot in my resource part of the email that you'll get when I'm done teaching today. There's a lot of links in there that you can look at, but this is one of them. And so, Victor, I just want to make sure you're covering the waiting room. Is that so?
Yes, I am chatting with him or her.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. So this is a pattern for a textured crochet throw blanket. And why I picked this as a good one is because you can see that the patterns are different, that there's different blocks in here. So if you wanted to just learn one of these blocks and make it into an entire blanket, you could. Or if you wanted to try a variety of things, you could. So that was why I picked this. It's called a crochet along, and this Yarnspirations company does crochet alongs quite frequently, at least yearly, maybe more. So if you go online and you Google crochet along projects, you're going to get some ideas for projects that cover time. What I like about some of them is they're called mystery crochet alongs, and you only get part of the pattern at a time. So you might crochet a block and wait a week and get the next pattern, crochet a block, wait another week and get the pattern. And you don't know what you're making until you get all done. And I think that's a great deal of fun to do. I did that actually. I made an Afghan like that at one point and gave it for a gift. And I was really quite proud of it when I got done. But this is a good example of the things that you would find in a pattern. And I'm just going to show you real quick that we're going to cover 3 pages of this pattern. Although the pattern is really much longer than 3 pages. Don't get scared, Nancy. I'm going to help you understand it. Okay, so what you see in here are some common aspects of a pattern. So we're going to start with the title. So in this case, the title's over here. This title's published by Red Heart in conjunction with Yarnspirations. And it's called The Checkerboard Textures Crochet Throw. That's the title. Okay, then the next thing that you want to look for is you want to look for the pattern difficulty to know if you're ready to try it or not, right? And so this one tells you in this row, it tells you that this is indeed a crochet pattern, that the skill level is intermediate. In other words, you have some crocheting experience. And also, it doesn't always tell you this right up at the top. It's also telling you that it's made with a yarn that is a size 4. And that 4, I'll show you at the end, but that 4 you can see on the label. So if you walked into like a Walmart or a Meijer or a Target, excuse me, and you went to the yarn section and you picked up the label and turned it on the back side, this code is going to tell you that the yarn is a 4 or a 2 or a 6. The generic acrylic yarn and cotton crochet yarn is usually 4. So that's what you're going to usually see in the big box store. So it's telling you just going to use basic materials. So that's your pattern difficulty. The next thing that this one tells us is abbreviations or special stitches. And this is why you don't have to memorize everything, okay? Anything that is beyond, and this one even tells us like DC is double crochet, right? This one even tells us that. There might be an assumption that you know that DC is double crochet, but look at, see this DCBP? I would have no idea what that is. So I would want to read it. So it's saying yarn over hook. That's what the H is, yarn over hook. Yarn over is usually just YO. I've not seen YOH before. Yarn over and drop a loop around the post of the next stitch. This is fairly complicated, but it's telling you exactly what you need to do. The other thing is oftentimes if you read it and you still can't understand it, if you go on to Google and you type in DCBP and you look in the videos, click on the videos tab under the bar where you type in what you're looking for, you're probably going to find videos on how to do this. And I've actually had to do that I did a crochet Afghan one time that was this diamond pattern. It was absolutely beautiful. I could not figure out what they were telling me to do to join the pieces together. I Googled the name of the pattern and I got the video and I was able to complete the project. So these abbreviations, or sometimes it's called special stitches, really helps you know how to move forward with the pattern. So I think it was Marty said, the sentence it can be so long and so confusing. It's because they throw all these crazy, initials in there, right? And so that's what we want to try to break down today. So you've got your abbreviations, your special stitches. It's also going to tell you the materials that you need. So in this case, it's telling you you're going to need 13 balls of Red Heart soft yarn. And in this case, they use the light gray heather, but you can switch your color up, obviously. Because it's a size 4 yarn, you don't even have to use Red Heart. You could use any acrylic yarn that is a size 4. So if you like to work with Patton's yarn, for example, or Lionheart yarn, you can switch that out. That's the nice thing. What I do, however, recommend is that you make sure you buy enough for the project, especially because some yarns have what they call a dye lot. And that when they dye it in a vat, everything that comes out of that vat is going to be the same color, but it's not necessarily going to be the exact same color the next time they dye a vat. And so always buy enough to complete your project if at all possible. What I have found is if I keep my yarn like in the bag that it came in, and I keep it clean, and away from other things. If I bought 15 balls and truly only needed 13, if I've kept the receipt and I've kept the yarn in good shape and I do it within a reasonable time, they've always taken the yarn back. So better to buy a little more than a little less. And then this also tells us the size hook or hooks that we might need. So this is telling us that we need a G hook, which is sometimes also numerically a 6, and sometimes also called a 4 millimeter. So when you look at a hook, and I do cover this in my Learn to Crochet class, a G, a 6, or a 4 millimeter are all the right size hook right there. For the granny squares, and then you need a size F, or also commonly known as a size 5, or also commonly known as a 3.75 millimeter crochet hook, or the size needed to obtain the gauge. We'll talk about that for just a little minute. So those are your materials. It usually tells you measurements. And so what this is telling us is if you complete the entire Afghan, it should be approximately 47 inches by 57 inches. Then it tells us the gauge. Now the gauge, I think, is super important if it's clothing or like doll clothes, or, you know, it's something that that it's very important for it to fit. The gauge is very important. And so what this is telling us is if you made a square, the granny square, that it's going to be 10 inches square. So if you did a practice square, and you found out that your square was 12 inches square instead of 10 inches square, you know you need to use a smaller crochet hook, right? And that's what I have to do. I go down at least one size, if not two, in all of my crocheting projects because I'm a loose crocheter. So I've crocheted long enough now that I just automatically go down at least one. And if the gauge is important, I still check my gauge with that. And I have had to go down 2 hook sizes before to get the right gauge. Or if you're a very tight crocheter, and I have a friend who she always has to go up a size hook or 2 when she's crocheting for the same reason. And then the next part of the pattern is going to be the instructions. Now I'm going to go to the next page to show you more about the instructions. But before we leave this page, let's just do a little fun check-in. If I said to you, what is the skill, and you can answer out loud or you can type it in the chat box, what skill level does this pattern take? Could you find that on here? I'm seeing head shake. Yeah. What is the skill level? Anybody want to shout that out?
Intermediate.
Great, good job. All right, if I said to you, can you tell me how to do a popcorn stitch? Could you find how to do the popcorn stitch on there?
Yes.
Yes, great. Okay. If I said, how big is this Afghan going to be when it's all done? Could you tell me that?
Sure.
Okay. All right. And then if I said, how much yarn do you need for this project? What would the answer to that be?
13 balls.
Right. And sometimes, so it's 13 balls of the Red Heart Soft yarn. What I forgot to tell you is if you're switching up, let's say you're switching to the Lionheart brand of yarn, their balls may not be the same exact length or weight. So right here, it's telling you that a skein of the Red Heart Soft is 5 ounces or 256 yards long. So you're going to want to double check that, because if it's, let's just say, for example, the Lion brand it's 300 yards. And I know that means I'm going to need less. What I would do is I would take this 13, multiply it by the 256, and then divide it out to see how many skeins I need, because I won't need a full 13 if another brand is bigger. So that's one thing for you to keep in mind too, if you're switching up your brands. Any other questions on this page, or any wonderings? Are you wondering anything about anything that I've shared so far? Okay, next page. This is Nancy, I love your face. Okay.
This one gets me.
These are the instructions continued. And this is what Marty was saying earlier, is you look at one of these instructions and you just scratch your head saying, what in the heck is it asking me to do? So I want to tell you that even as I've been crocheting since I was 10 years old. So even as a very experienced crocheter, looking at this, I find overwhelming. And if I look at this as, oh my gosh, I need to understand this whole page before I can move ahead, this is going to go in the garbage, right? Because it's just overwhelming. But if I say to myself, I'm just going to figure out one row at a time or one round at a time, that's how I get through it. Okay, so I want to tell you that I don't want it to scare you. I want you to say, I can do this. I just have to break it into bite-sized chunks. Okay, so in the instructions, and it gives you kind of some general overviews. So for example, it's telling us right here that the granny squares are worked in the round. And we'll talk about that a little bit more in a minute. And it's saying that when it's worked in the round, a stitch is 2 rounds or rows below the work around the stitch in the row round number 2 less. It's telling you some information here that you're going to need to know at some point, but you don't need to know it necessarily until the pattern refers you back to this. All right, so this one says chain 3 at the beginning of the row or round counts as a double crochet. That's a very important piece of information right there, because if you don't count that chain 3 as a double crochet, you can end up with too many stitches in your row or your round. All right. So when we look at the instructions, we're just going to look at this a little tiny bit. It's telling us that here's the first thing that you're going to make is a granny square, and you're going to make 10 of those. And it's an easy skill level. What I liked about this pattern in particular is every single square in here tells you whether it's an easy or an intermediate square, which means that let's say that you only think you can do the easy granny square and the easy square number 1, make that into the whole Afghan, do 10 of this and 10 of this instead of the ones that they're telling you to make. So that's one approach that you can take. So it's telling you that it's easy. It's telling you the gauge for this particular square, and then it begins to tell you what to do to make it. So that's another part of the pattern. We're not going to go through this one in detail. This is way too hard to cover in detail. And the other thing is photos. Make sure there's photos. If you don't have a picture of what your finished project is going to look like, it's hard to know if you're on the right track or not. So make sure that there's photos in your pattern. This is the last page of the pattern, and I can't remember how many pages long it was, and I can't tell if I think I've got it covered up with my screen share, but this is the last page, and you can see that this was published on December 3rd of 2020. So this was a 2020 crochet along. It tells you how to finish it. So it's saying arrange the squares as in the assembly diagram. That's this over here. And so this is going to show you with a picture how to put your squares together. And then it's telling you that with a strand of yarn, you're going to whip your squares together, sewing through the front loops of the single crochet stitches around the edges. So it's telling you what you need to do to sew it together. And then it's showing you, Marty, was it you saying you knew how to do a border? This is telling you how to crochet the border that they're recommending for this pattern.
Right. Usually I just do a single or double crochet all the way around.
Yeah. So this would be a lot fancier, wouldn't it?
Sure.
Now this is not this chart that's right here is not part of this pattern, but I put it here just to remind me to tell you that some crochet patterns, and you need to look at this if you're buying one, is done by charts, and each one of these symbols means something different. I'm not going to be able to, I don't crochet or knit by chart. I've done it before. I don't care for it. It takes me too long to figure out, but you have to be careful because you literally could pick up a pattern that only shows you how to do it with a chart. And if you don't know how to read a chart, that's going to be difficult to accomplish. What I do like though is when they, like in the pattern that I used in my knitting, learn to read a knitting pattern class, they had the written instructions and a chart for every single square, which I really, really liked, because then I can kind of double check my work against the chart. And I do like that. Any questions so far on the parts of a pattern? Everything's there you need to know. Okay, so just a couple of assumptions. Most patterns assume that you know you're going to start with a slip knot, and your slip knot, if it says chain 16, your slip knot is your first chain, but the one on the hook doesn't count. So you're only counting the ones that you've completed, including the slip knot. And then you're going to follow the steps of the pattern, row by row or round by round. You're going to get a foundation or a chain row usually that's not counted as a row. It's just your foundation, or it might tell you to chain and put it in and join it in a circle. That's how you're going to start a granny square. There's also something called the magic ring. That's a newer strategy for starting a granny square. I used it in 2 baby Afghans recently for my 2 granddaughters that were born last week, actually. And my magic circles fell apart in 3 of my granny squares. So I don't know, I'm going to use that. I don't know if I was doing something wrong or if it's just not a good strategy for me. But anyway, you might see that magic round or a magic, start with a magic circle. And then you complete the project and follow the finishing programs or instructions. So this would be row by row. and this is just a quick picture to show you that row by row is you would go one direction all the way across, turn your work, come all the way back, turn your work, go all the way back, turn, and you're going row by row, versus a round where it's you in most rounds and lots of rounds, the front side of the work is always facing you. And you're going around, and it tells you how to do the second round, and then it tells you how to do the third round, etc. And you see this a lot. You'll see this a lot in granny squares. If you were going to do, like I did a planter cover one time, and the bottom of it was done in a round that looked very similar to this. And then when I got to the sides, it was just the same number all the way up. And that's what gave the sides the circular pattern to it. So that was a good rounds project. Okay, this is where we're going to actually break down the pattern and how to read it. And Marty, this should answer or maybe start to address how to look at a whole row and figure out what it's saying. So this is a pattern. I can't remember what this stitch. I think it was called the moss stitch. So this was a pattern, a free pattern that I found online, and it's telling us that you need 1 ball of the Lily. I think that's a typo. It should be Lily Sugar and Cream Cotton. And that's the cotton yarn that makes a real nice dishcloth. If you're looking to take the next step with reading a pattern, and you don't want to like try a whole Afghan, a dishcloth is an awesome way to go. And that yarn that it's talking about there, that 100% cotton, is also a size 4. So that dishcloth in a cotton is really great. And it's telling us we need an H or a 5mm crochet hook. Now remember, washcloths are really forgiving. So if your gauge is off, it's not a big deal. In this pattern, the abbreviations that are used are yarn over, chain, single crochet, and skip. So we know from that it's relatively easy. And it starts with a chain 36. And I'll send you this pattern when we get done so that you can try it if you want to. So we've chained 36 stitches. And in row 1, that's what R1 is row 1, you're going to single crochet in the 4th chain from the hook, comma, you're done. Okay, so you're done with that portion. So what you have to watch for is you have to watch for the punctuation, because here we've got a comma, notice that, and here we've got a semicolon, and that's giving us 2 different pieces of information. I'm going to explain that. So you're going to single crochet in the 4th chain from the hook, comma, means you're done with that part. Now this one has an asterisk. And what the asterisk, I'm going to just skip over here and show you that it says repeat from asterisk to the end of the row. So when it gives you it with an asterisk, what it's telling you is what is between the asterisk and the semicolon is what you're repeating. You're not repeating this part that came before the comma. You're repeating what's between the asterisk and the semicolon. So what you would be doing is chain one, skip the next stitch, single crochet in the next stitch over and over until you get to the end of the row. And you know you're in the right spot if you can single crochet in your last stitch or your last chain from your chain foundation. Then there's a period. Now you're done with that part. Chain two and turn your work to go the other direction. All right. Are there any questions on that row one? Think you could do it? I see Loretta saying a yes. Nancy, what's puzzling you?
I don't know, single crochet next stitch.
The which part?
I'm trying to figure what single chain.
Single crochet.
Yeah.
Yep. In the fourth
Okay.
chain from the hook.
Chain one.
Yep. Skip the next stitch or the next chain from your foundation
Single
row.
chain in the next stitch.
So basically you're doing every other chain.
Single crochet. It's just hard to picture what it would look like with.
You almost have to do it, right? So what you have to understand, then this is how I do it in my head. I do it. I go, okay, well, what does that mean? And then if I get to the end of the row and I've got and I can single crochet in that last stitch and I have the right number of stitches in my row, woohoo! Sometimes, you know, I was getting ready for class last night and I saw somebody, oh, I know what it was. It was in my Facebook feed. I'm in a crochet group. And somebody had showed a part of a pattern that had a number in a parentheses after the row. And she said, what is this number? I love it when they do that because what they're telling you, if they put that number there, is how many stitches you should have when you get done. And that helps you know that you're exactly in the right place. That's a very helpful thing that a lot of pattern makers do. All right, so let's go on.
I have a question too.
Go ahead, Marty.
When you single crochet in the next stitch, do you pick when you go into that next stitch? Is it just one loop that you're putting on the?
That's
on
a
the
great
hook,
question.
or
That
two?
is a great question. Let me see. I'm gonna try this and see if I can do this for you guys. I'm gonna stop my share for a minute, and I'm going to change my camera. Let me see if I can do this. Nope. Sorry. That was not what I meant to do. And I'm going to go to this and I'm going to see if I can show you what you're asking. I'm going to see if I can show you. The problem is I'm in a very light room. And okay, I think you might be able to see that, right? So this is what I did for this piece was I did a row of single crochet, half double crochet, treble crochet, and then I went in reverse order, just so that you could see that a single crochet is a very small row and a treble crochet is a very large row, right? Okay, so I ended with a single crochet row. So I'm going to chain one and I'm going to go the other direction. Okay, and if I'm going to go in the first stitch. So your question is, do you go in just one of the loops? If it doesn't tell you anything different, you go under both. And how I know that I'm in the right spot is if you turn that so you're looking at the top of the stitches. Do you see the V's that are there that look just like a chain? Let me see if I can get a shadow on it so you can see these V's that look just like the chain. If it doesn't tell you anything different, you want to be under both parts of that V. Gotcha. So in this pattern, Nancy, that we were talking about, I'm going to do a single crochet here. And then we're going to pretend that this is my chain row. Then I'm going to chain one. I'm going to skip this chain right here. And I'm going to go in the next one. And I'm going to single crochet and I'm going to chain one. And then I'm going to go in the next, I'm going to skip the next chain and go in the next one. That's what that pattern is telling you to do in row one. And what it's telling you to do is to make it more lacy, right? My single crochet row down here is really solid because I did it in every single chain. Now what I'm getting is a lacier look. Does that make sense? Is that helpful?
Yes, yes,
Okay,
yes. Thank you
great.
very much.
Great. Okay, now I'm going to go back.
I didn't know about the V's. That's a good
Helpful, isn't it?
a good hint. Thank
Okay,
you.
good. Yes. Okay, now let me go back and I'll go back to sharing my screen here. Get the correct camera on and see. Okay, so let's now go ahead and go to the row 2 in this. So in row 2, what it's telling us is single crochet in the chain space from the row below. Now it's telling you go into that open spot, right? Because we've created these open spots. So single crochet in the chain space, and this may have, another writer may have said CH space, right? Which would be the abbreviation for chain, in the space from the row before. Then there's that asterisk. There was a period there. That's really helpful, right? That really definitely says you're done. Then, oh, there's that asterisk. So let's go ahead and look. Where is the semicolon? Ah, there it is. So we know that everything here is going to be repeated, right? So we've got our first single crochet done. Next, we're going to chain 1. We're going to skip 1 single crochet and single crochet in the next chain 1 space. So now what we're doing, basically we're doing the opposite of what we did the row before, right? We're putting a solid stitch above the open stitch. And that's what that's telling us to do. And then it's telling us, because now we're ending that row a little bit different, it's telling us the last single crochet is worked in the space between the chain 2 turning chain and the single crochet from the row before. Now that sounds like a whole big mouthful, right? But when you get to that point in your row, that's going to make sense because you're going to be able to visualize what it's telling you to do. And then you chain 2 and you turn. And then that's it. You are going to repeat row 2 until you have 34 rows or the dishcloth is square. And you just figure out if it's square by folding it from corner to corner, right? And making a triangle. That's how you can tell if it's square. And then you're going to cut your yarn and weave in your ends. Okay. All right. So I'm going to go to the next. I'm going to just tell you, we already talked about a little bit about that asterisk, right? And here's an example of it. Everything that comes after the asterisk is the repeat, and repeat sometimes is abbreviated like this, REP. Also though, I should have given you a visual of this. A lot of pattern makers, instead of doing the asterisk and the semicolon, will put a beginning bracket here and an end bracket here. It means the same thing. So either asterisk and semicolon or 2 brackets to tell you what's going to be repeated. You may be wondering, how do I keep track of my stitches? How do I keep track of my rows? Here's some examples of ways that you can mark your stitches. Somebody in my knitting class yesterday said she puts a marker every 10 stitches so that when she's doing a long row, she knows where she's at in the row. I thought that was a great idea. And then check your stitches every once in a while, especially when you're beginning this process, to make sure that you've got the right number of stitches and the right number of rows. And crocheting, what I love about crocheting is it's easy to rip. You know, it's a lot more forgiving to rip than knitting, let me tell you. So there's several ways to track your stitches. You can use tally marks. You can use a stitch counter. There's apps for this. I did not know that until I was prepping for this class, that there's apps to track stitches and rows, and know how to recognize your stitches so that and types of stitches so that you can count. And then always remember to look for those finishing stitches at their finishing instructions at the end of the row. Okay, I'm going to have to speed up my talking, so hang in here with me. So this is a dishcloth number 2. This is an actual like screenshot of a free pattern that was online. I kind of liked how this one was organized. She tells you all your supplies that you need up here in this box. So the Lily Sugar and Cream yarn is the same, you know, for the dishcloth is the same. This one takes an H crochet hook. Here's her abbreviations, which are really simple, right? Yarn over, slip, and single crochet. And then look, HBDC. What is HBDC? Herringbone double crochet. Oh, I don't know what that is. Well, look, right under here, she says special. Remember I said sometimes it says special instructions, she says a herringbone double crochet is, and she tells you how to do it. Right? And if you read that and you tried it and you still didn't understand it, you could probably Google it and get a video of how to do that specific stitch. So don't let these be deal breakers for you. It's telling you that if you crochet it according to her instructions, it should end up approximately 13.5 inches by 13.5 inches. And you're going to start with yellow and chain 36. Row 1. There's that special stitch. You're going to start with that right off the get-go in the 3rd chain from the hook and repeat until the end of the chain 3, turn, and you should have, there's that example, and you should have 34 stitches at the end. I love that. You know, if you're right on track, right at the end of that row. And then row 2, you're going to do that, whatever, the herringbone double crochet in the first herringbone double crochet from the row before, and you're going to repeat that until the end of the chain 3 and turn 34 stitches. And then you're going to repeat that row 2 until you have 16 rows, or it's square, tie and cut off and weave in the ends. And then she tells you how to do your border, how to work your border. And you know, it's right there. Any questions on this one?
Yes. What is it? Why are you tying it? Tying what to what?
Sorry.
Because you're still weaving in the ends. You just make a knot?
Oh yeah, she just means make a knot. And what I do for my knot is I just would cut this off. I just make that last loop real big, cut this off and put it through, and then weave it in. Yeah, that's all she's asking. And you wouldn't tie it off, Marty. You wouldn't tie it off if you were going to do your border the same color.
Of course.
She's just got a 2-color border. That's the only reason there's a tie in there at all.
Okay.
All right. Other questions?
Yep, thank you.
You're welcome. Other questions on that? Nancy, did you have a question?
Yeah. The 34 stitches, is that the HBDC? They mean to do 34 of those?
Yes, that is exactly right. See, you're getting it. All right. So this one, I'm not going to go through in the kind of detail that we've been going through, but it's got a couple things in it that I think are really neat. So it's telling you, again, it's telling you skill levels easy. It's telling you the materials. It's telling you your specific size. The gauge on this one just drove me crazy. It was 12 stitches for every 4 rows. I have no idea what that means, but it's a dishcloth, so I'm not going to worry about it, right? It's telling you Marty, you were asking about where do you go through? It's telling you sometimes in this pattern that you're going to go through that back loop only, which is the back side of that V that I showed you. Mm-hmm. And the front loop would be the front loop only of that V stitch.
Okay.
Okay. Does that make sense?
Yes,
okay, great. I like it how she's used the term foundation row, chain 21, but notice chain 21, even though she's calling it a foundation row, is not counted as a row. Your row 1 is this single crochet in every stitch, in every chain across and turn. And she told you need 20 when you're done. What I wanted to point out in this pattern is, see the color changes? She tells you use, color A, whatever color you've chosen, use color A when you do this row, use color B when you do this row. And here's that asterisk, repeat from the asterisk across and turn. Okay, so do you see anything in there? And then repeat row 1. Well, you're going to go back here and repeat this row. Repeat row 1, go back here and repeat this row. Oh, sorry. Yes. Repeat row 2. So you're going to go back and do this row again. Repeat row 3. And what happens, what's nice when there's this repeat pattern is if you make enough of these, you'll memorize it and you won't even have to look at it anymore. I did the granny square Afghan that I did for my 2 granddaughters had 10 different rows in it. And I did 20 squares per Afghan. And by the time I got to the second Afghan, I didn't even need to look at the pattern anymore. So once you do it a little bit, that repeat becomes a lot easier to understand.
I have a question about changing colors.
Yes.
Okay. when the first color is you have a stitch on your hook. So when you loop over the hook, that's the new color, because then in your chain one, your first chain, you actually have two colors.
I'm going to go back and I'm going to switch my camera again. And because that you're asking a great, I think I'm going to change my camera again. So I'm going to show you a trick. Okay. So I don't have another color here with me right now, Marty. It's out in the kitchen and I'm not going to go, but so can you see I'm at my last single crochet on this row. Okay.
Okay.
And I go down through the V and I get my stitch and I bring it back up. And now I've got 2 on the hook, right?
Correct.
So what I used to do was I used to pull through and then change my color. And it makes this ugly, ugly transition.
Correct.
What I learned is I take my new color at this point. So pretend with me for a minute now that this yarn that's in my left hand was green. I would do a little slip knot here with my new color and pull that slip knot through. And what happens is the white is here and the green is here. And then I tie the 2 pieces together over here on the edge. But that makes the smoothest color change I've ever seen.
Okay.
So that's my favorite. That is my favorite way of transitioning between 2 colors.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. All righty. Okay, we have to go on fast forward now because I've got like 8 minutes left. I really love doing this
Sorry
stuff.
for
I'll
all
tell
my
you. Oh no, that's why I'm here. So we talked about, you weave in your ends when you finish a project. You don't cut it off close to your knot because it's gonna unravel. So you want to weave in your ends. I like to use a tapestry or a yarn needle to do that. Sometimes a project will ask you to block it in the finishing instructions. And I loved this picture because it's showing you what it means by blocking. I saw this done on have you seen those kids foam blocks that you can hook together and make a pad for the floor? They're like 12 by 12 inches. That would be a perfect blocking thing for a square, but you pin it to the right dimensions and then you can steam it with a steamer. You can steam iron it, but you can't touch the fabric if you're steaming it because it'll melt it, especially if it's acrylic. You can spray it with a bottle of water and then you just dry it flat. And then you remove your pins when you're done and continue sewing it together. That gives you a nice, really nice square. I like to use T-pins. Instead of this one has a head on it, a little round head. If I'm using acrylic yarn, that doesn't work for me. I like those T-pins that you could get in the sewing department because they are big enough to usually hold your fabric down. These are some good beginner projects. If you're wondering about a next step, scarves, blankets, placemats, table runners, wall hangs, pillow covers, dishcloths. I mean, every time that I've prepped for one of these classes and I look up free patterns, I spend hours online because there's so many to choose from. So you don't have to buy a pattern anymore. It's an amazing thing. I'm not going to go through this because of the time that we have left, other than to say I'm going to give you this link so that you can go to this. Remember, I said the label that we were using today has a 4 on it. This company it's like a yarn council, and they do the standards for yarn. They're telling us that yarns come all the way from this little tiny lace size all the way up to jumbo yarn. And there's 3 types of yarn, 3 kind of like general categories: animal fiber, plant fiber, and synthetic. So animal would be like your wools, plant fibers would be like your bamboos, and synthetics would be like your acrylics. I put this in here because I had a lady ask me, what do I use if I'm allergic to a lot of stuff? And the animal fibers was the most highly allergenic one. Plant would be next and synthetics next. And know that there are yarn blends as well. So, read your label. There's all kinds of information. This is like, the assortment of yarns that are available today it's overwhelming. So knowing how to read your pattern label is important. And it, you know, this is that symbol that I was telling you about. It's right on here. This tells us it's a size 4. This tells us that it's a blend. This tells us how much yarn is in it in ounces, how much is in it in yards. It's telling you what it would gauge at if you use knitting needles or if you use a crochet hook. It tells you your laundering instructions. There's lots of information on your label. So, you know, pick it up and look at it. To me, that used to look like a code too. But now that I'm comfortable with this part of reading a label, I can choose yarns so much more easily and swap them out as well. Here's a close-up of that gauging space. What this is telling you is if you used a J hook and you did 12 single crochets and you did 15 rows, it should end up 4 by 4. So that's what that is there for. This is a tip on storing. I do it by like, I have my acrylics. I have a lot of acrylics. And so I sort my acrylics by color. And then I have my wools in its own basket. I have my baby yarns in its own basket. I have my cottons in its own basket. And I have my specialty yarns in its own basket. This is not my picture. It's just a picture to show you one idea of how somebody does it. But it's keep your label with your yarn, keep your label with your leftovers, and sorting them together like that really helps you more easily pick leftover yarns if you want to do another project. These are the resources that I'm going to send you, and I'm going to send you the patterns as well that I covered today. So if you want to try it, you can. I'm going to be teaching this class over and over again. So if you want to come back at another time and say, hey, I was trying that dishcloth and that didn't work, can you help me out? I'd be happy to do that. So what questions do you have at this point?
I have none, but thank you for helping me with all the questions I had previously.
Good. I'm happy to be here and help with that. I'm going to be doing learn to knit and learn to crochet. It's not on the schedule right now, but if you want to, you know, go back to get some basics, watch for that on the schedule in the future. I'm teaching calligraphy and brush lettering tomorrow. Finding, sharing fun things on Pinterest is actually going to be finding crafts. That was a typo in on the website. And that's on Friday. And then I also do a knitting, reading patterns, and choosing yarns that's on the schedule for next week. So those are my upcoming classes. You know that after we get done, I'm going to send you an email. And if you scroll down, you'll see this orange button. I would love your feedback, especially because this is the first time I've taught this content. You're my first learn to read a crochet pattern class. And so I'd love your feedback, you know, what worked for you, what didn't, so that I can modify what I do for future classes. So when you click on that, you get this, and you can change the stars. You can give me a 1 star. You can give me, you know, whatever you want. You can give the class content a star. You can add comments if you want to, but you don't have to. And then if you have suggestions, either overall or whatever, you know, there's a spot to do that. We'd love to have you invite your friends when you sign up for classes. And all of these things are optional by emailing the help@getsetup.io website. You can now register on the website to host an interest group if you want to. You can suggest new classes here. You can share your organization. We'll reach out to them. You can request a recording. You know, if you want to go back over something that I've shared today, you can request a recording. And if you need any help, I'll stay on for a few minutes while we're finishing up here. I'm going to just look real quick and see if I missed anything in the chat. Any last questions? Nancy, do you think you can do it?
No, but wait.
Are you going to give it a try?
Well, we'll see. Add that to the list of things that need to do. But yeah.
All right. How about you? How about you, Loretta?
I am going to start, when I get through, I'm going to start making the square patterns because I want to put them together and make a purse.
Oh, that would be beautiful. That
Yes.
would be awesome. Oh, you'll have to come back and tell me how that works out.
Okay.
Anybody else? Comments or questions or hopes that you have or projects that you're working on? I love hearing about that. Well, you've been a wonderful class. I have so enjoyed being with you today, and I wish you the best in your crocheting journeys.
Thanks a lot.
Thank
All
you
right.
Thank
so
you so
much.
much.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.
Enjoy your
now.
Bye.
Thanks, I will.